the XO podcast presented by Marriage Today. I'm your host, Brent Evans, president of Marriage Today. And with me today is Sean Reed and Caitlin Edwards. Welcome, guys.
What's going on?
Sean is the senior pastor of Crossroads Church in Fort Worth, Texas. Mm-hmm. Yeehaw.
Oh, yeah.
He's also the co-founder of Not Just Roommates with his wife, Lynette. Welcome, Sean.
What's happening, Brent?
Nothing. Ready for a good podcast today. Caitlin's got some good stuff for us. She's going to be bringing us some topics of discussion, some news articles. They're all locked and queued, right?
Oh, yeah. Ready to go.
All right. So our topic today, our main topic, is on privacy and passwords in marriage. If you're married, you've got a smartphone, you've got a computer, we're going to be talking about how and what not to do with your computer, your smartphones when you have a spouse. We'll be right back to talk about it more.
We're talking about cybersecurity today and how safe people's passwords are. What is one of your online passwords currently?
It is my dog's name and the year I graduated from high school.
Oh, what kind of dog do you have?
I have a Chihuahua Papillon.
And what's its name?
Jameson.
Jameson. And where'd you go to school?
I went to school back in Greensburg, Pennsylvania.
What school?
Hempfield Area Senior High School.
Oh, when did you graduate?
In 2009.
Oh, great.
It's like my cat's name and then just like a random number.
Okay. Have you had this cat for a while?
Yeah, she's my childhood pet.
Aw. And what's her name?
Her name is Jolie.
Jolie. Mm-hmm. So like a password of yours would be Jolie and then a number.
Yeah.
Like number 1?
Like my birthday.
Oh, when is your birthday?
June 12th.
Oh, nice. And what year were you born?
95.
Oh, great. Mm-hmm. So Jolie, 6/12/95. Got it.
Welcome back to the XO podcast. Hey, listen, the XO podcast is something that we're doing that's new. And at Marriage Today, we have a television program that goes all around the world, and we know that it reaches people who are hurting in their marriage. The same thing we're doing here with the XO podcast. We know there's people out there who need help in their marriage, and we're here to just talk about that, have some conversations about real things in marriage. I know one of the dynamics of my life, I work for Marriage Today. I'm in the marriage business, and my wife and I were talking about this last weekend. Whenever I introduce myself and say I'm the president of Marriage Today or I run a marriage ministry, you should see how nervous people get.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes, it is one of those things where if they're married, they all of a sudden just sort of like act like they have like this marriage thing figured out. They start to give me advice, like, yeah, you really got to have like really good communication in marriage, and it's just one of the most important. And I'm sitting there going, they're just real nervous, like you can just see them sort of get sort of out of place.
Like it's a life pop quiz.
Yes, like I'm, and so
like
they
you're
think
psychic and are going to read their marriage mind.
Yes, and they think I'm a counselor all of a sudden. You know, I run the organization for my dad. I do a lot. I've been married for 20 years. I know a lot about marriage. But what I've realized is most people want to put on this facade like their marriage is really good. It makes them nervous to talk about what's happening sort of behind the scenes. Yeah. And so Stephanie, my wife, and I were talking about this whole dynamic with marriage. And I think one of the things I want to talk about with the XO podcast is we're going to bring topics of discussion, conversations that you can play in your car, you can play anywhere. So we're going to help people in their marriage so they can do it when they're in the privacy of their own home. They don't have to feel awkward about it. I want people to enjoy learning about marriage and listening about marriage. We're going to have XO clips from our XO conferences as a part of this podcast. And we'll be talking about some fun things along the way.
It's fantastic.
But today we're going to be talking about privacy and passwords in marriage. This is a really sensitive topic. I know, Sean, you told me you and Lynette posted a YouTube video a while back that discussed this exact topic, and it blew up for y'all.
Man, we have had an amazing response, both for and against the ideas that we tried to present when we started talking about cell phones, passwords, and privacy. And to our amazement, a lot of people don't want to share their information with their spouse. They want to keep this little device private. They don't want their spouse to know what all is going on, I guess, within the privacy of their social media or their emails or what have you. And that causes a lot of conflict and strain on a lot of marriages.
Yeah.
You know, within relationships, a lot of people don't want their spouse to know or have access to their information. And so you'll be in the car and one spouse is, you know, doing whatever they're doing on their phone. Spouse kind of leans over and looks over and they kind of do one of these numbers where they're turning their phone and angling it away to where their spouse can't see it. Well, automatically right there you see a spot of distrust. They're trying to protect and kind of own their own space. Their phone all of a sudden becomes a reflection, or their tablet or whatever it is. It's a reflection of their own private space, that they want privacy within unity. And that's a challenge. How do you balance being married and at the same time have your own separate private world to where your spouse can't look in on it?
You're kind of stirring the pot a little bit, aren't you? Stirring the pot around here with some...
Yeah, it gets deep because within marriage, husband and wife have to be one. They have to be united in every aspect, financially, sexually, and relationally. And so if there's an area of my life that I want to remain private and I want to keep it away from you, then at that point, am I not building a wall up that will eventually create contention or distrust or some form of strife? Sooner or later, there's going to be a breakdown within the marriage if there's not unity in that area.
So does Lynette know your password on your phone?
Yes, she does.
What is that password?
I won't tell you.
So we have...
I love Lynette. 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
That's perfect.
So we're going to be talking about privacy and passwords in marriage today. We hope that you'll stay tuned to the podcast. Also, we want to talk about date night. Date nights are important at Marriage Today. We believe in them as a discipline in your marriage. It's one of the things that can help your marriage thrive. And our friends at Datebox have given us an opportunity to tell our XO podcast listeners about their product. They have a Datebox that comes every month to you. It's a subscription service. And if you go online to getdatebox.com and use the promo code XOPodcast, you actually get your first date for free. They'll send you the first box for free. And this is something that's new every month. You get it in the mail, you open it up, they give you all the instructions that you need to have a wonderful date night. And listen, we get busy, things get challenging, we have a lot of things on our schedule. This makes it easy to have a date night. So there's no excuses not to spend some time. Guys, this is a huge win. Like, go online to getdatebox.com, use the promo code XOPodcast. I promise you, this is a win. This is a W in your column for today if you can get the Datebox from these guys. Thank you for our sponsors, Datebox, and go online and check it out now. We'll be back soon at the XO Podcast.
Well, I've got some good news for you, and that is you have a 100% chance of success in marriage. A 100% chance.
Couples with the strongest marriages, they aren't the ones that never had a reason to give up. They're the ones who just refuse to give up. God is still in the business of raising dead things and bringing them back to life.
You're not just gonna stay married forever. You're gonna stay married happily ever after. And that's what we believe when we say that your family has a bright future.
Join Jimmy and Karen Evans for the XO 2018 Marriage Conference. Visit xomarriage.com.
Let's talk about an article that came out recently in the New York Times called "How Did Marriage Become a Mark of Privilege?" This article talks about how marriage today is reserved for a more privileged class, a higher income class, that men and women are delaying marriage until they feel like they're in a more educated place or they have more money. At one point, the article says less educated people are more likely to move in with boyfriends or girlfriends in a matter of months and to get pregnant at a younger age before marriage. So we're seeing this trend of delayed marriage in lower income classes. Do you guys feel like that's true?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely true. Not only have I seen it played out, but I think more and more as I try to urge couples to get married, I'm actually having to urge them to get married. And I'm wondering why. And so I start talking to them, and all of a sudden it's about money. It's about have they accomplished certain goals in their life by a certain time. And so they could be living in every aspect of their lives like a husband and wife, but they don't want to yet have the ceremony. They don't want to make, I guess, the big commitment to be married, even though they're living as if they are married.
Right.
And I think it's largely an economic fear. They feel like they haven't accomplished everything that they wanted to accomplish by a certain date or time, and so they're willing to delay marriage. But for my wife and I mean, we got married 19 years ago, and when we got married, we were broke and we were struggling financially, but we did make it. In fact, I believe that as we built our lives together, it actually strengthened us relationally. And so I would love for people to, accomplish some type of financial stability before they get married. But if they're delaying being married, simply put, because they want to have a degree or they're looking for a person with one, they may be missing out on one of the key benefits of finding relationship with a person that they have fallen in love with and they want to build their future with, rather than seeing them already come in already well equipped.
Yeah. But what's the solution to this problem? Are we just going to continue to see marriage decline over and over the years? I mean, what do we do about this problem?
Well, my opinion is it's kind of a chicken and egg thing, because when I met my wife Stephanie, I was a pastor's kid and I was not doing well. I was just off the rails, and she really was sort of the instrument that God used to kind of get me back on track. And if I didn't have Stephanie in my life at that point, I mean, I probably would have made really, really bad decisions. And then I hear so many guys say that their wives are a part of their success story.
Absolutely.
And so not getting married almost hinders you. So you talk about, hey, I don't have a job, I'm not ready for marriage, I don't want to get married until I'm ready. Well, if you get married, sometimes that's a catalyst for actually getting you to a better place.
Right.
Studies have shown that married couples are socioeconomically better off, but that's generally because they help each other. There's either two incomes in the household, or one stays home with the kids while the other one goes to work, or there's time to go to get an education now because you got another income in the household.
Right.
So you're bettering each other through marriage. So by not getting married, you're hurting yourself.
Yeah.
But I understand the dynamic of feeling like I don't have everything figured out yet, so why would I go take this huge step without having it all figured out yet? And then a man's pride comes into it too. He doesn't want to get married without a job, or feeling like he's not able to provide for a wife and kids. So in my perspective, I would encourage people to get married once they're ready, because it will improve their life.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of sisters, and I don't blame them, where they're just looking and they're saying, you ain't putting a ring on this one.
Yeah.
Unless you can afford the ring. And so I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. However, I feel like maybe they're running from marriage because they haven't put themselves in a position to find the right caliber person for what it is that they're looking for within a mate. And so we'll see what happens in the near future, but hopefully more people would get married sooner than, okay, we've been dating for 9 years. So what else do you need to know about them?
Right.
To qualify them. And so to say that we won't go ahead and say I do because we're waiting on the day that we get our degree, it's like, what does that say about marriage?
Right.
What does it mean spiritually? What does it mean biblically, rather than it's just another, kind of check in the box of the bucket list. Okay, we've accomplished this, we got the degree, we finally got the job, we make this much, we got 2.5 kids, and now we're ready for marriage.
Right. We have an article from the Huffington Post called "Stay Off of Social Media or Risk Divorce." Dun, dun, dun. Which is kind of a harsh declaration, but statistics are backing this claim up. So they say in this article that 1 in 7 people said that they would consider divorce because of their spouse's questionable activity on Facebook, Skype, Twitter, other social media outlets. And almost a quarter of those people that were polled said that they have an argument around social media or about social media at least once a week. And then 17% of those people said they fight about social media every day, which is crazy, but it's something that we're running into all the time. So what do you think it is about social media that creates such problems in relationships?
Well, I think that we have a lot of things that we can get into on social media that are good for us, and then it's bad. It's like technology is wonderful until all of a sudden you use it to interact with things and engage in things that you shouldn't do. For instance, on social media, you find old flings, old friends, old relationships that need to be cut loose.
Or they find you.
Or they find you,
right.
Absolutely. I've actually had that happen.
I know.
We've had people, shoot emails, and my wife, because of the fact that she has access to my information, she was able to see it, and she was able to know, and it wasn't like she had to catch me.
Right.
And it wasn't like I had to hide it. And I think that becomes the issue. It's a matter of trust. And it also is a matter of preserving your integrity, right? Integrity is like nothing missing. It's being a complete whole number. And so if all of a sudden you have within the relationship a part of me that's secretive, that's a part of who I am being removed away from my wife, and it's being committed to protecting something that I shouldn't even be invested in. And so I'm losing integrity slowly but surely, and trust could be being lost within a relationship, and that's a hard thing to earn back. And so if I hide it from my wife and she has to discover it, then I've broken the trust, and that's not something that's easily repaired. It can be, but it's not easily repaired, especially if I go on defending.
Well, in the article it talks about 58% of spouses knew their other spouse's passwords, even if the other spouse didn't know they knew the password. And so that the other spouse wants access to that. Right. Most people want the password, or they're going to get it some way to make sure that things are going well. But we're going to talk about this in the next segment after the break. Stay tuned to the XO podcast. You don't want to miss Sean talking about how to make sure your passwords are encrypted, super secure. There's no way your spouse can get into it. No, we're not going to talk about that. Stay tuned.
When you're with a person who values technology more than you, it hurts. And the phone rings and they answer it rather than keeping a conversation going with you, it hurts. And technology can destroy a relationship. When Karen and I met, there were no cell phones. When you were alone with a person, you were alone with a person. And you could not be reached everywhere and at all times. And somehow, right now, we feel like if we turn our phone off, somehow something bad's going to happen. Let me say, if it's that important, they will find you. They will find you. Turn the stinking thing off. Create a technology-free zone in your family every day where you relate without TV, without computers, with all that. Sit down, play games, sit down face-to-face and talk. Sit down at the dinner table because technology can destroy your family. And I'm saying technology's fine. It's a great servant. It's a horrible master.
Here at the XO Podcast, we like to do something we call Worst. This is something where we have the worst of an action, something that's going on that's the worst. The worst! Today we're going to be talking about...
Today we are talking about the worst antiquated marriage laws. These are real laws. I can't vouch for whether or not they are still in place, but at one time these laws were in place related to marriage in these states. Are you ready? First up, first cousins are allowed to marry in Utah only if they're over 65 years old. This is a real law.
That's the worst.
That's for the kids, right? You don't want to have three-armed kids and...
Right, or maybe they're just being generous, and if you've been patient for 65 years and they're willing to wait that long, that maybe you really are in love and want to marry.
Was that Jerry Lee Lewis that married his cousin? Yes, Great Balls of Fire.
He did?
Yes. Okay. Isn't that right?
Maybe so.
Goodness gracious.
In Vermont, a wife must obtain written permission from her husband before wearing false teeth. So my question is the alternative like no teeth or bad teeth?
So the thing is, these laws were put on the books for a reason.
Right.
So somebody that was a lawmaker had a problem with the fact that his wife got dentures.
I think some guy got deceived. He thought until the honeymoon, she walked in, she was like, "Baby, I love you."
It's like you need to see her without makeup before you marry her.
Yeah.
That's the worst.
Save the romantic walk in the park for Saturday. It's illegal to kiss your wife on a Sunday in Hartford, Connecticut.
Interesting.
What?
Fail.
I guess it has something to do with God.
I think if you're like against PDA, that would be a good law. Like you'd live there a lot, you'd go visit there quite a bit. Mm-hmm. But if you're really like a rebel and you wanted to make the town mad.
Yeah.
That tells me something really frisky was happening in Hartford, Connecticut on a Sunday that this law had to be made. Maybe on the church steps.
I'm sure there's a certain part of town on Sunday, which was like the red light district, where you can just go mug down with
But
your
it's
spouse.
married, yeah, like red light district of marriage.
Yes, exactly.
No.
These are really interesting laws. I like the one from Cape Cod where you have to show your marksmanship, prove your manliness in order to be married. You have to kill at least 6 blackbirds or 3 crows in order to receive your future wife's hand in marriage.
Crows must be harder to catch than blackbirds if you only have to catch 3 of those.
Wouldn't you not want to be a crow or a blackbird in that town?
Maybe it's not very manly men in
Or you
that
be the
town.
guy that only killed 2 of them. You needed to kill 3.
How deflating. That would be really bad. You wouldn't hear it for the rest of your life.
Imagine a relaxing, adventurous cruise among glaciers, mountains, and charming fishing villages, combined with life-changing marriage teaching from Jimmy Evans. Set sail June 29th to July 6th, 2018 on the XO Marriage Cruise to Alaska. Unforgettable views, luxurious accommodations, and 8 days of romance in one of the most scenic parts of North America. Book your stateroom now at xomarriage.com/cruise.
PASSWORD. Come on! It's the password rap. Kids, teens, parents, and teachers. It's clicky on the mic.
All right, we're back talking about passwords and privacy in marriage. This is an important discussion topic because a lot of people, I think, cell phones are pretty pervasive in our society. Everyone has one. And a lot of times you can do everything with a smartphone these days. It's a flashlight. It's your calculator.
It's less often
It's
a
your mail.
phone than it is anything else.
It's amazing. Like
it's a part of my brain.
It is, and you don't leave it anywhere. You take it with you wherever you go. That's why I never touch anybody else's phone. So
I understand.
we have a problem in our society, especially in marriage, where people have so much that they do on their phone that they keep private. That's a lot of times spouses don't feel like they're invited into that world. So whether it's social media apps or whether it's just interaction with people through text or email. So Sean, start us off talking about how you and Lynette address this issue. I know in your church at Crossroads Church, I'm sure you'll come across this a lot in relationship counseling. Talk about passwords, privacy, in marriage, and go a little bit deeper into it.
Yeah, one of the things we noticed was a common theme amongst our couples was that it was popping up more often than not that all of a sudden maybe someone was cheating or there was some suspicion that there was some kind of cheating or something like that, and it would all boil down to whether it was Facebook or whatever it is, Snapchat or whatever. They would have a separate account than their main account, and in that it would lead to suspicion, and all of a sudden someone in the relationship felt insecure, and it was both men and women. And so what we started trying to encourage the couples to do is, hey, share it. Just share your password. Make sure that your spouse is aware of whatever accounts that you have. And all of a sudden, it was like we were asking them to commit, the greatest act of sacrifice ever. And see, my wife and I, we didn't see why it was such a big deal to share like your social media account or your email address, whatever. I mean, because we share our money, we spend our money together, we have sex together. Surely we can share social media, but. What I've come to discover is that most people feel like that's kind of like a private space of their identity. Like they don't see social media as just something that they just kind of use. It's attached to them. So their profile, what messages get passed along, what information is shared, like it's sacred and it's private. And so they don't want their spouse having that sharing that segment of their world. And so my encouragement to all my couples out there, listen, any area that's off limits to your spouse is an area where I believe that the enemy can come in and he can bring about distrust. He can come in and cause suspicion to arise within a relationship. And the challenge with that is now they're kind of second guessing how much they mean to you, how secure they are in the relationship with you. And it leads to doubt. So you may not be cheating, but it does kind of give this question in the back of the mind of, what are you hiding from me?
Right. Even if it's innocent, I'm sitting here wondering, if you can't show me, then you have something to hide.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so why is it so difficult to make this simple sacrifice? You live together. That's a sacrifice, right? You spend money together. That's a sacrifice. You committed your bodies together. And so if you have nothing to hide, then go ahead and share, the information. And so if it means saving your relationship, share the information. In there are different, let's say there are different places that couples may find themselves in. Someone may be recovering from adultery within a relationship. In that particular relationship, I'm saying you absolutely have to share, your information, because that spouse it's going to take some time. They could have forgiven you, but it doesn't mean that they completely trust you. And that's going to take time to rebuild trust. And so these accounts are like huge. And so we encourage everybody to just go ahead and make this sacrifice, give them access, and just prove that you have nothing to hide, right? And it shouldn't be that much of a crime or that big of an issue if it saves your relationship.
Well, if you're giving access, what do you think about somebody who's intentionally, frequently going in, looking for something, digging, really maybe abusing the access that's given? Is it possible to abuse the access that's given? If
all of a sudden they start posting, in place of you posting, then absolutely, that's a little weird. Like, I don't want you speaking for me. However, again, if I have nothing to hide, then why not? It should accomplish meeting the need of giving them security. And yet at the same time, if that spouse is kind of obsessively, all of a sudden, they have their CSI glasses on and they're, checking.
Lurking.
And that's a conversation that we need to have, where it's like, look, I'm giving you access to everything about me, and yet you still don't distrust me. We have a different issue. Right. But if it's a matter of the fact that I'm hiding this and I'm compartmentalizing this aspect of my life, and at that point I may be putting my relationship in jeopardy, and it's just not worth it, right? Social media shouldn't have that much of a dominant impact on our relationship as much as it does. And so we have a lot of couples that have a persona that they're, portraying within, the social media world, Snapchat, Instagram, whatever. And it may not be true of what's going on in that relationship. And that may also be causing a strain within the relationships as well.
Right.
Well, now they have fingerprint technology, so you can kind of keep your fingerprint as your ID, which makes it very individualized. So on my phone, I have my wife add her fingerprint to it as well.
Yeah, that's good idea.
And I'll find every once in a while she'll just have my phone and she'll just be going through my text messages, catching up. She calls it catching up on my life. So a lot of times I have conversations with people she never knows about because I just throughout business or throughout friendships, I'm not telling her about every single conversation I have. But I give her access to go check them out anytime she wants to.
Right.
And she loves that. She loves to have the opportunity to go in there and dive into my world. That is your world. The phone is your world. It's how you interact with your friends and business and everything like that. Your spouse should have access to that world.
And it offers a level of accountability. If you know that you've got access to your spouse, it keeps you from maybe sending a text message you shouldn't send or a message you shouldn't send.
I think that's a great point. So, like, if I'm searching for things, on Instagram that I have no business searching for.
Right.
And my spouse finds it. If they have to find it.
Right.
I believe that becomes the backbreaker for relationships is that they're all of a sudden discovering that a person may have a porn addiction, or they're discovering that you may be speaking with someone that you used to be in a relationship with, and all of a sudden that's a huge breach of trust. I think the thing that maybe sometimes we miss is that adultery doesn't necessarily begin the moment that a person has sex outside of the relationship. Adultery happens the moment that in my heart I began to pursue another person in place of my spouse.
Right.
When I've determined that my spouse is not enough, and all of a sudden I'm searching for things or searching in places that for fulfillment. I'm looking for something else to satisfy me within outside of my relationship. That becomes the most dangerous thing. And so if my spouse all of a sudden discovers that, I think that's where it begins to lead to kind of this path of separation.
Okay.
And so,
even more so than the actual action, sometimes just finding out that it was being hidden hurts more.
Yeah. And so I love the idea of just having that kind of accountability to make sure that your spouse can look in and weigh in on what's going on in your life. I think it's powerful.
I read an article recently that said that cheating's not having sex outside of marriage. Cheating is lying about it. Like the definition of cheating is lying about it.
Wow.
So in that regard, when you lie to your spouse about a text message you sent to somebody, maybe just be an emotional thing, that's when you're cheating. That's the kind of the territory you're entering into. And in that regard, you kind of need to keep things in the light, on the up and up, in order to have peace and unity. I see so many couples fight about the phone, whether it's distraction because they're always on it, or it's because there's things on there that they don't have access to. And it's one of those things where if you want to just diffuse all of that, just let your spouse into it. Like, show them your world. Show them that element of your life. Give them access to it. It solves so many problems in a relationship. So building trust it's all about building trust in marriage. That's a key part of it. So Sean, you guys are doing this at Not Just Roommates. You're talking about this with couples. So a couple of takeaways. Give our listeners some takeaways that they can do right now to kind of provide some unity, some peace in their marriage related to technology.
Yeah, the first thing for me is give access to everything. And I'm talking about everything from bank account information, logins, passwords, email. Give accessibility. What do you have to lose if you do? The second thing for me is kind of piggybacking off of what you just said. How much time are you actually spending on social media? Is that your world, or do you have a world outside of it? If you're spending hours and hours and hours on social media, that's an indication that you're looking for something to bring you fulfillment or maybe validation, or we're looking for some form of favorite, share that's causing things to validate things that we really need to happen at home. And so there may be a need for greater validation and time within a relationship. And I think lastly, if you do suspect something or you're tired of them lurking, you need to have that conversation sooner than later.
That's good. Yeah, I talked to a guy recently who said that if people they can predict divorce. He's a big data guy. He talks about data all the time. They study data on socioeconomic stuff. And if somebody's spending time on their phones at night on social media, it's a predictor for divorce. So that means they're not spending time with their spouse. So spending time on social media away from your spouse is a danger zone. I mean, my wife and I get on social media all the time. Everybody does. Everybody's on Instagram, scrolling through things. And I think a lot of times people prop themselves up a certain way on social media to give themselves a lot of pretty poses. They're always in romantic places. They're always doing the right things on social media. But offline, a lot of times there's enmity between the spouses. There's jealousy because the social media is like everything. It becomes their life.
I was reading something that was saying that it's really insecurity that causes you to post about your relationship excessively. So sometimes couples that we see that look like they have the happiest marriages, you don't love me unless it's on Facebook. A lot of the time, those are really hurting people. We just don't know.
Yeah, it makes you jealous when you see them like proposing in Paris or going on these crazy trips, and you're sitting at home like with kids.
Pizza on your face.
You live in those worlds. Thanks for joining us for the XO podcast. We've had a great time today. Hope you have too. Listen, what Sean said was important. We have some things that you can take away right now and apply to your marriage. Make sure that your spouse has access to your phones. Like, give them the passwords. Tell them. Say, listen, here's my password. You have access to it. Again, more points in your account. I promise you. The second thing is limit your time on social media. Do not take time away from your spouse. That time on social media is definitely taking away from time with your spouse. And the third thing is communicate. If you're feeling like the vibe in your marriage has less intimacy because of technology, talk to your spouse about it. Be honest. We hope to tune in next time for the XO podcast. Listen, you can go to xomarriage.com/podcast to check out all of our episodes. We're putting our show notes in there. We're putting links to all the articles. We're going to have a lot of stuff there for you to take away. Share this with your friends, subscribe to the feed, and we'll see you next time.